Hi there. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and welcome back to another episode of Drop Dead Serious. It's day 3 of Karen Reid's retrial unfolding in Dedham, Massachusetts. And today was short, but it wasn't sweet. Jurors got a blistering view into the relationship between Karen Reid and her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, a Boston cop who was found dead in the snow outside of a house party 3 years ago. Prosecutors say Karen hit him with her car after a boozy night and a day of fighting. Karen says he died inside that house party and that she's being framed by the real killer or killers. If you are new to this case and you need an overview, or even if you've been following the case but you need a refresher, I got a few podcast episodes about this case and they'll be linked in the show notes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, the episodes will be in the video description. That should help you get back up to speed.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
So back to today and that blistering view into their relationship that I just mentioned. It came in the form of text messages, a barrage of messages and phone calls that showed a desperate and angry Karen Reid battling with her boyfriend in the hours before he died. Jurors also today watched clips from Karen Reid's media interviews, where she talks openly about vodka tonics and how much she had to drink and whether she was in any condition to be driving that snowy night. And one clip in particular was brutal for Karen's team. It was from a docuseries where Karen gave lengthy interviews. In the clip, she mocks the grieving mother of her boyfriend, a mother grieving because just hours earlier, she'd found out her son was dead. And the jury saw that in all of its glory. Like I said, it wasn't good. But let's break down what happened before the judge called it a day. Right off the bat, the judge ruled that that damning clip was in fact okay for the jury to see. And within minutes, that clip was rolling in open court.
And his mother leans over the kitchen island and says to me, "I think it looks like you got hit by a car. It looks like you got hit by a car."
Yeah, that's what you call a snarl. That is what you call bad evidence for a defendant. You never want to be seen mocking anybody's mother, right? Let alone the mother of your boyfriend, a mother who has just discovered her son is dead. And you're imitating her like that with your snarling face. It's not good. And it's going to be hard for the jury to forget that. It might have been more powerful had it been played yesterday. And the prosecution wanted it to be played yesterday. They tried, but the judge was like, yeah, I need to sit on this one for a while. I'll rule in the morning, which she did this morning and did play it. But I said yesterday would have been more powerful because yesterday that victim's mother was on the stand. And it was a very emotional witness. You know, her testimony was gut-wrenching. She's talking about seeing her son dead and bruised. She's grabbing Kleenexes. She's sniffling. She's got to take breaks. She's talking about having to tell the kids about John being dead and how difficult that was. She was an amazing witness because she humanized John O'Keefe as a real person with a real family and a real tragedy that happened when he died. It would have been very powerful right after that to see that clip of Karen Reid mocking that grieving mom that you just saw with the tissues on the stand. But that didn't happen. So I guess you could call it a win-lose for Karen Reid. It didn't happen yesterday where it would have been horrendous, but it did happen today where it wasn't very good. Is it probative? I don't know. I'm not so sure it is. Is it prejudicial? Oh, yeah. It absolutely is. But let's not forget, all evidence that's against a defendant is prejudicial. It's just the value of whether it's also probative. Who knows if this could be an appellate issue? I don't know. I highly doubt it. It's just a clip, and Karen freely gave that in TV interview. I mean, why she did it? She has her reasons. Was it better for her to give that interview with all of its warts? Probably. Despite the fact it's being played against her in court, because she got her story out to the jury pool and the public, right? Her story without having to get on the stand and endure a withering cross-examination. Okay, so next up, it was time for the cross-examination of Daniel Kelly. Kelly is a Canton firefighter and one of the first emergency responders on the scene the morning of January 29th, 2022. And under direct exam on day 2, firefighter Kelly had described arriving at 34 Fairview and finding John O'Keefe lying in the snow, face up, arms at his sides, clearly unresponsive. He said John's body was stiff and cold, with visible signs of trauma, including blood around his nose and his face. And then came a familiar phrase, one we have now heard more than one first responder repeat, and that is Karen Reed yelling the words, "I hit him! I hit him!" Firefighter Kelly testified those were Karen's words, all right, and that she was hysterical and distraught and repeating herself at the scene. But again, the defense challenged that memory. And one of Karen's attorneys, David Yannetti, he came in hot.
So then we come to yesterday on direct examination. Do you recall that Mr. Brennan yesterday asked you, before you left, were you having any conversations with the defendant? And you answered yes. You recall that yesterday?
Is that at the hospital?
I'm asking you yesterday, do you recall Mr. Brennan asking you, before you left essentially the scene, were you having any conversations with the defendant? And your answer was yes. And Mr. Brennan said, can you share with the jury what those conversations were about? And your answer was, so we were talking, she was upset. She kept asking if there was any chance her husband could be alive, even sitting outside in the snow without any coat for many hours. Do you recall that answer that you gave yesterday on direct examination?
Yes.
And that was the first time that you mentioned that she said, supposedly, or asked supposedly, about him sitting outside in the snow, correct?
I was just using phrases generally speaking. I wasn't at that point I was paraphrasing. I was not speaking verbatim to what she said.
Let's try that again. That was the first time that you mentioned that she claimed or asked that he was sitting outside, correct?
It could have been sitting, laying, being.
Let's try it a third time.
So just ask the question, not let's try it,
Sure.
let's try it.
Was that the first time that you testified under oath that Ms. Reed said or asked about him sitting outside?
Are you asking me to clarify whether she used the word sitting?
I'm not asking you to clarify anything. I'm asking you whether that was the first time yesterday during direct examination that you mentioned that she asked about him sitting outside.
I'm sorry. I am very confused because I'm trying to figure out if he was being outside, sitting outside.
I'm asking you about Ms. Reed's statements, sir. That's all I've been asking you about. Her statements to you and your testimony about her statements to you. Was yesterday on direct examination the first time that you testified under oath that Ms. Reed mentions the words sitting outside?
I don't know.
All right.
I'm just using. She might have said laying outside, being outside, outside.
Okay. So when you testified yesterday before this jury,
Yes.
that she mentioned the words sitting outside, you're now saying that that might not have been accurate, correct?
It could have been a different word.
Okay. But you didn't say it could have been a different word yesterday. You just left it as sitting outside, correct?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I said, sitting.
All right. What you said on cross-examination yesterday, which was she said that he had been out in the snow without a jacket on for many hours. That was not a declarative statement by Ms. Reed, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow that. Was that a declarative statement by Ms. Reed?
She asked if he could be alive without a jacket in the snow for many hours.
So, it was a question, sir.
She asked me, and we were just trying to give her hope in terms of telling stories of hypothermic patients that could survive outside in the snow.
The next witness up was Michael Camerano, a friend of John O'Keefe's. Michael's daughter is still close with John's niece. Michael became emotional as he recounted the events on the night before John's death, stating that he and John and Karen Reed had all gone for drinks at C.F. McCarthy's bar in Canton.
Hi, good morning. My name is Michael Camerano. Mr. Camerano, can I ask how old you are? I'm sorry.
Spell your last name.
Camerano.
Could I ask you how old you are?
48,
Where do you live?
Canton, Mass.
How long have you lived in Canton for?
Me and my wife have lived there for 20 years. Me and my wife have lived there for 20 years. We have 2 children.
How old are your children, sir?
My daughter is 17. My son is 14.
Did you know John O'Keefe?
Yes.
How did you know him?
I met John for the first time at his sister's. They had a benefit for his sister in 2013. I met John there for the first time, and then years later, our kids got involved with sports together, and they became very close. As they became close, I became very close with John and his family.
Was your daughter close with John's niece?
Yes.
Was your son close with?
Yes.
Did you spend a lot of time together through sports and socially?
Yes, we did.
I want to take you forward to January 28th of 2022.
Okay.
Do you remember that day?
Yes. That Friday, my daughter and his daughter, they got acceptance letters to school. So we wanted to get them together so they could enjoy the time together. And, just go over like how it would be so much fun, something new, different. So we were going to meet up after I got out of work.
Did you spend time at CF McCarthy's?
Yes.
Were you drinking?
Yes.
Was John drinking?
Yes.
Alcohol?
Yes.
How long were you there for?
A couple hours.
While you were there, did anybody come and meet you that you knew?
Yes.
Who?
A friend. And then Karen came in.
You got home?
Yes.
Did you do anything significant when you got home?
Put the kids to bed, my son, and no, I went to bed.
What's the next thing you remember happening?
Waking up to, I missed some phone calls.
Who were the missed phone calls from?
From my wife and Karen.
What did you do?
I called my wife.
After speaking to your wife, what did you do?
I got in my car and drove to John's house.
About what time was this?
In between maybe 5 and 6 a.m.
What was your mood at that point?
I was panicked.
Why did you go to John's house?
Because I went to get Kaylee.
Did you know if she was alone?
Yes. She came out the door, and I asked her, if she needed anything, she could get in my car and stay warm.
When you first saw Kaylee, what did she look like?
She looked distraught.
Did you try to help her?
Well, I think I just said everything will be okay.
Did she come with you?
Yes.
Where are you going?
To my house. And then, I don't know, a couple hours later, maybe, Paul called me and asked me to bring Kaylee home.
Did you know anything at that point?
I did, yes.
You did or didn't?
At that point, I did when Paul had told me.
So what do you do?
Asked Madeline and Kaylee if I'd say, Madeline, we come for the ride. I don't say anything to Kaylee, and we get in the car, and I start heading back to John's house.
And you didn't say anything to Kaylee?
No, I didn't. I just said everything will be all right. She had a feeling.
Why do you say that?
She don't want to go home.
So what happens next?
So I pull in the driveway, and I remember Paul and Papa standing, I think they were standing at the side door, and we just embraced.
Under cross-examination, the defense questioned Michael Camerano about the nature of Karen and John's relationship, probing for any signs of discord or conflict that might have been evident that evening. But Michael Camerano responded that Karen and John appeared to be getting along well that night, with no overt signs of disagreement.
Did you stay?
No, not long. No.
Did you go back?
I was to the house. I went back to my house.
Did you go back to John's house?
I did the next day, yes, I was there.
When you went back, were there people there?
Yes,
Many?
there was people coming and going.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Camerano.
Good morning.
This is quite painful for you to remember the events of January 28th, is it not?
Yes,
You were very close with your friend John O'Keefe, correct?
I was close with them, yes.
And you actually met Karen Reed through John, correct?
Correct.
After meeting Karen, you spent a good amount of time with both Karen and John, correct?
Correct.
As of January 28th of 2022, you had known Karen for maybe about a year or so?
Sounds correct.
And you'd see them especially on Fridays, correct?
Correct.
That would be sort of the day that you get together with both of them often?
Yes.
And of course, your children spent a lot of time with John and Karen, right?
Correct.
You entrusted both Karen and John with your kids.
Yes.
Sometimes your kids would even go on vacation with Karen and John, right?
They did go to the Cape, yes.
Sometimes you'd see Karen without John at your house or on a ball field.
Correct.
And your daughter in particular would sometimes spend time with just Karen without John, correct?
Correct.
Your daughter would sometimes go over to Karen's house in Mansfield when she lived there, correct?
Correct.
And obviously when your daughter would go to Karen's house in Mansfield, Karen would be the one in charge of caring for her, correct?
Correct.
And you were fine with that because you liked and you trusted Karen, right?
Correct.
And in your view, Karen was very good with kids, right?
Correct.
But you also had the opportunity to see Karen and John together, right?
Yes.
You saw how they interacted with each other over that year period that you knew Karen?
Yes.
You saw how they got along?
Yes.
And you never observed any arguments or bickering, correct?
I mean, they argued and bickered.
You had previously testified that you wouldn't even call it arguing, you just call it banter, right?
Yes, I mean, he would, he would get upset or like over if she bought expensive things for the kids.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. We will get to that. That would be the one thing that John would complain about, Karen buying like very nice things for his niece and nephew, right?
Correct.
Or he'd complain if Karen was taking his niece and other girls to get their nails done, like extravagances like that.
Correct.
And one specific memory you have is when Karen bought his niece a very expensive sweater, right?
Correct.
And you recall John telling you that he wished that she hadn't done that because he considered that to be spoiling the girl, correct?
Yes.
But it was very clear to you from your observations that Karen really, really liked John. I'm sorry, John really, really liked Karen, right?
Sustained.
He certainly never told you or even suggested he was thinking about or planning to break up with Karen, right?
No.
Okay, so with regard to that Friday night, January 28th, sir, the plan was for you and John to go to McCarthy's to have some drinks because there was a storm coming in, correct? And because of the celebration of the girls getting into Bishop Fen?
Well, yeah, we were going out. It wasn't a continuation of the celebration of the girls. We were going out to have a few beers as guys.
You had no inkling that day that anything was wrong between Karen and John, correct?
No.
Everything seemed fine between the two of them, right?
Yes, he did mention though that night that he didn't understand why Karen had a plumber go to the house.
Because he had somebody that could have done that work instead of paying for the plumber, right?
Well, yes.
Okay.
And
but in any case, the plan was for Karen to meet up with the two of you, right?
yes.
And she did show up to McCarthy's at about 8:30 p.m. or so?
Yes, I guess, if that's the time.
And you saw an affection...
I'm sorry, what was the answer that you said?
If that was the time, I'm not sure about the timeline.
Okay. It was sometime after you had
Yes.
gotten there. Right.
Correct.
But you do remember when Karen arrived, there was an affectionate greeting between John and Karen, right?
Yes.
You saw them kiss, right?
Yes.
You saw John put his arm around Karen,
Correct.
and you saw that Karen sort of nestled into his embrace.
Correct.
And when she did that, that's when he kissed her, correct?
Yes,
And they seemed happy to see each other, did they not?
they did.
That night they were affectionate,
Yes.
laughing,
Yes.
happy,
Yes.
like a normal couple.
Yes.
No arguments.
No.
You witnessed no bickering, no tension, correct?
No.
And during the month before John's passing, that January of 2022, you observed their relationship in your presence to be normal, caring, and affectionate, right?
Yes.
And then came the hammer. After Michael Camerano was done, the prosecution introduced a series of text messages that Karen and John had exchanged in the last full day of John's life, January 28th, 2022. The messages were read out loud by Massachusetts State Police Trooper Nicholas Guarino, and boy, oh boy, did it ever show that their relationship was in the toilet. In one message, Karen seems really insecure, asking John if he's interested in someone else. John says no, but says things hadn't been great between them for a while.
All right, this is from Karen Reed to John O'Keefe. You have really hurt me this time. This was sent at 9:49:20 a.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. I'm sorry, this has been an issue with me for 8 years. It physically hurts me to see everyone else in their life do things for them, and I'm forced to always be the bad guy. This was sent at 10:02:56 a.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm not the same as everyone else. Most of the time I try to do what is healthy/smart for them. More importantly, I try to support you in what you need. You just lashed out at me and said terrible things. I don't know how you've gotten to this point with me when I'm just trying my hardest. You made your point and continue to beat me down. I have a lot going on too. Physically, I am falling apart and trying to get answers and help. 10:09:49 a.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe. I am just your girlfriend. I am not a perfect parent. I am trying very hard and sometimes treat them nothing like I used to. 10:46 a.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant. I know. I'm sorry for lashing out. I'm just hurting and struggle daily with them. Always feel like I'm failing at this parenting thing. I wasn't built for this. 10:12 a.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. Kaylee isn't perfect, but everything wonderful about her is because of you. 12:21:36 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, an emoji is sent at 12:21:59 on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, it's true, I know she's her mother's daughter, but she wouldn't be so bright and successful if she lived with anyone else. 12:22:51 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, wow, Kristen just sent 2 back-to-back messages to not lose your faith in the kids. 12:31:28 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or in yourself, at 12:31:41 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, there's 2 emojis sent at 12:32:06 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, no, and there's 2 emojis. Life can pick you up sometimes. Please be happy with them and put away your frustrations for the rest of the day. And be so proud of yourself, JJ. And that's 12:33:35 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, that's what bothers me more than anything. Should have sent Peg's or Sarah's W-2s. We are all equal guardians. 1:18:21 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, maybe you can call someone. 1:21:55 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, like who? 1:46:42 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, what time are you coming here? 1:47:38 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, it's another emoji sent, 2:05:30 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I don't know what time, feel kind of out of it, just trying to clear my head, 2:06:07 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, he writes, okay, 2:06:25 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, text me when you guys settle in later, 2:06:44 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, sure, 2:06:58 p.m. on the 28th. The phone calls, text messages, and then we'll start with the first slide. This is from the defendant to John O'Keefe. I feel pretty shitty about how this morning went down. I know you said sorry, but it really stung, especially when I've been trying pretty hard lately. I feel like a loser turning around, just coming back over after everything you said. 2:16:10 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not sure what you want me to do. I said I'm sorry and I was out of line. If you prefer to stay home, I totally get it. 2:17:16 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, things in my own life have been difficult too, you know. 2:17:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, I know. 2:17:40 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:17:45 p.m., the defendant calls John. The phone call is answered and they speak for 2 minutes, 22 seconds. 2:23:02 p.m., the defendant calls John. That's again answered. And they speak for 1 minute, 2 seconds. At 2:24:17 p.m., the defendant calls John and the call is rejected. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, tell me if you're interested in someone else. Can't think of any other reason you've been like this. 2:25:18 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, nope. 2:25:33 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that? 2:26:03 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:28:40 p.m., the defendant calls John. That call is rejected. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, kids are here, not in the mood to talk. 2:29:03 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so you're not into it anymore. That's fine, but I don't want to keep trying and you keep treating me like this. 2:29:12 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm trying to hug and kiss you this morning and you whack me in the face with a pillow. 2:29:59 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, last night you're basically like, yeah, what about when we talk about the future? So why don't you just admit you're not into so much anymore? 2:30:23 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not how it went down, but okay. 2:30:26 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please admit your head is out of the game with us? 2:30:52 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, sick of always arguing and fighting. It's been weekly for several months now. So yeah, I'm not as quick to jump back into being lovey-dovey as you apparently. 2:32:28 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:32:47 p.m., the defendant calls John. That call is rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant, OMG, stop calling. 2:32:54 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, then why would you start with me this morning? 2:32:58 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you're setting me up to fail. 2:33:05 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, you started a number of fights from your end. 2:33:26 p.m. on the 28th. And John O'Keefe to the defendant, I've explained it a few times already, not doing it again. 2:33:31 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so you're not into this anymore. 2:33:41 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, not into fighting all the time, correct. 2:34:03 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, if you tell me you're interested in someone else, you will never hear from me again. You can have all the space in the world. 2:34:11 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, he sends an emoji. 2:34:19 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, then stop starting with me. 2:34:20 p.m. on the 28th. 2:34:29 p.m. the defendant calls John. He rejects the call. John O'Keefe to the defendant, I'm not answering. Stop calling. 2:34:42 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please answer after how you treated me earlier? 2:34:43 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:34:54 p.m., the defendant calls John. That's rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant, Kaylee is right here. 2:35:02 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, you start a rager with me out of nowhere and then tell me you're sick of fighting with me. 2:35:41 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm going to grab a drink in a bit. 2:38:14 p.m. on the 28th. 2:38:42 p.m. the defendant calls John. That call is rejected. The defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please answer? 2:38:52 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, no Karen, not sure why you need to announce that you're going, not sure why you need to announce that you're grabbing a drink, but have fun. 2:39:46 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, seeing if you want to meet me later. 2:40:22 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, can you please call me? 2:40:32 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, have to take them to the doctor. He has practice. 2:40:55 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, yeah, 5 minutes. 2:41:17 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:43:01 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 2:43:45 p.m., the defendant calls John. The call is rejected. John O'Keefe to the defendant, my father just walked in. 2:43:58 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, can you please call me for 2 minutes? 2:44:14 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, not right now. 2:44:23 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I'm there when anyone else needs me. 2:44:26 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:45:32 p.m., the defendant calls John. The call is rejected. The defendant calls Mr. O'Keefe. Yes, John, you gave me utter grief this morning. I'd like you to call me for a minute. 2:46:16 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe. I've been trying to get over the hump with is arguing, and now you tell me you're not into doing things, and you don't want to fight weekly, but fly off the handle at 8 a.m. with me, like you're setting me up to fail. 2:47:08 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I've been dealing with my own personal crisis over things I have zero control over. I'd like to lean on you too sometimes. Instead, I just hear everything I've done wrong. 2:48:34 p.m. on the 28th. At 2:56 p.m., the defendant calls John. The call is rejected. At 2:51:13 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's rejected. 2:52:37 p.m., John calls the defendant. It's not answered. At 2:53:56, the defendant calls John. Again, not answered. The defendant, John O'Keefe, you seriously cannot pick up the phone for 2 seconds. 2:54:13 p.m. 2:58:05 p.m., the defendant calls John. It's rejected. At 2:59:13, John calls the defendant. The call is answered and they speak for 4 minutes, 59 seconds. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, why don't you meet me at Hillside at 4:30/5, 3:08:55 p.m. John O'Keefe to the defendant sends an emoji at 3:10:08 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, or whenever you get, whenever you get everyone settled, 3:10:35 p.m. on the 28th. Second. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, like I said, doctor now, and he has practice till 6. If you want to go start drinking, then go for it. 3:36:21 p.m. on the 28th. The defendant to John O'Keefe, I didn't know the times of his practice. 3:36:40 p.m. on the 28th. And the defendant to John O'Keefe, I just want to give you space at the house without me there. So rather meet you out than meet at the house. 3:37:01 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, so do you plan on going out tonight? 3:39:01 p.m. on the 28th. From John O'Keefe to the defendant, Karen, I don't know. 3:39:17 p.m. on the 28th. John O'Keefe to the defendant, you're like jonesing to drink, so go. 3:39:43 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, okay, well, after how this morning went down, I don't think I need to be back over there with you. Get frustrated at how I am with the kids. Has nothing to do with drinking. 3:40 p.m. on the 28th. From the defendant to John O'Keefe, I am paranoid now that everything I do with them is problematic. So rather see you for a minute without it, kids around.
Between trial number 1 and trial number 2, Karen gave some interviews, lots of them, to ABC's 2020, to local media outlets, and to Investigation Discovery for a docuseries. And she readily talked about her drinking, especially on the night of January 28th, 2022. She said she had 1 vodka tonic about every 40 minutes at the bar and described the drinks at C.F. McCarthy's as weak.
When you walked out of the bar, how many drinks had you had?
I had probably about 4, and not 4 that I completed either. I didn't drink maybe more than a few sips at the waterfall.
And 4 drinks you felt fine to drive?
Yep.
And is the level of intoxication pretty high here for everybody?
It's happy.
Yeah.
It's
Because you'd had a lot to drink, right?
I wouldn't say I had like a normal amount. Let's say like a vodka tonic every 40 minutes.
Okay. And so are you feeling like buzzed? And I'm not judging, I'm just trying to get a sense.
Buzzed.
Yeah.
The final count of my alcohol intakes, probably about 5 or 6 or 4. The drinks that they were pouring me at McCarthy's, which is where I consumed most of the alcohol, was the weakest vodka tonic. It tasted just like old soda water with lime. Not that I need it to be a martini, but it might have had a splash of vodka in it. So I said, John, this drink tastes like it has no vodka in it. And he said, just get a shot and mix it yourself. So each drink was being counted as a double. So I would get a vodka tonic, and then I would pour a shot into it, so that would count as 2. Frankly, it just felt like a regular cocktail. It was just a really weak pour, so I asked for a shot. So for my taste, it just tasted like that's the normal strength of what a drink should be. So I had maybe 2 or 3 that are being counted as 4 and 6, and I don't know. I felt fine. I felt like I was buzzed. And then there was one drink, the last one that was given to me, which I would have counted as 3, but they're counting as my 6th cocktail. The guys that we were with brought around shots, and they gave me one that I didn't drink, but I poured it in my drink. So that's now my 5th and 6th drinks, with the 7th, which is a shot that all the men did, and I poured it. So that one glass that I'm holding, that I go into the waterfall with, has 3 drinks in it, a vodka tonic and 2 shots. And which is why John said to me, you're not leaving that drink here, like you haven't touched it and just poured a bunch of vodka. He's like, just take it with you, which was something he always did. So then I go into waterfall, and I put that drink down and I socialize most of the time. So that would have been my 5th, 6th, and 7th drinks. Then John orders me a drink at the waterfall that I don't drink, that he takes with him. And then there was a round of shots that Chris Howard bought that I did take. So that would have been the night. But I did not consume 9 vodka martinis or take 9 shots, depending on how you count it. And the last 2 drinks I didn't touch. I mean, I'm not as clear as I would be if I hadn't been drinking. I mean, I had drank, so, and that led me to question, like, could I have hit him? Did I run over his foot or hit him in the knee? Did I incapacitate him? I mean, I always drive with my music blasting ever since I was 16, and I know when John got out of the car to go into Fairview, I know my car was blasting because when I got in it the next morning to go look for him, I had to immediately turn it down. And I don't know, it's stormy. I have had a few cocktails. I didn't black out, but I wasn't as lucid as I would have been if I had gone to bed at 9 and drank a tea. But so I was fuzzier than I would have been if I had had no alcohol.
How did you feel after that many drinks? When you got in the car, did you feel like you could drive, and did you feel how
I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway. I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway at 12:15 on January 29th. I mean, it was quiet. The roads were very quiet. You can see it on the videos. And I was going, you know, when I've had a few drinks and I drive, I always drive extra slow. So I know my alerts aren't as sharp as they should be. But I shouldn't have been driving. But I don't think I was driving. I know I wasn't driving recklessly. I mean, I've got plenty of video of myself driving all over the place. I put my car in John's garage, which is incredibly narrow, and I had a very oversized SUV. You see me. There's a video of me driving through the intersection when we leave Waterfall to go to Brian Albert's, and I was always taught by my father, even when you have a green light, you always should tap the brake. You don't know who's going to run red. And I see me doing that multiple times between 12 and 1 and 5 and 6 a.m. So I know I was driving safely, not as safely or as alert as I would be if I had no alcohol. But I was not driving recklessly by any measure.
So what do you suppose a juror is going to think about this? And let's not forget, there's more than 12 of them, right? There's the 12 and the alternates. And everybody probably has something a little different about them when it comes to drinking, right? Some people are teetotalers. They don't drink at all. Some people are drunks. Some people drink and still get in their car and drive. Other people would never think of it. And that's when the reasonable juror principle comes in. Everybody's going to be a little different. What's reasonable to me may not be reasonable to the guy beside me. And that happens in a jury room when they start to debate this. What are these people going to think of those descriptions that Karen just gave about her drinking and her when she usually drives drinking, right? That'll all play into how they decide who this person is and what she's capable of doing. So before you pass judgment on Karen's relationship with the bottle and her penchant to drink and drive, be patient, grasshopper, because later in this trial, you're going to hear that she was not the only one with a habit of drinking while plastered in Canton, Massachusetts. In an unexpected turn, court ended early today, earlier than scheduled. Judge Beverly Cannoni dismissed the jurors before noon because the prosecutors simply ran out of witnesses for the day. The judge assured the jury that the issue was not going to affect the overall trial schedule and that the proceedings would continue as planned. But before they were dismissed, the judge told the jury to wear some comfy clothes tomorrow because they are going on a field trip. It's actually called a jury view, and a jury view is an opportunity for jurors to see things involved in the case. And in this particular case, they're going to see for themselves the place where all of this happened, 34 Fairview Road. I'm going to continue to follow this trial closely, bringing you detailed recaps so you don't miss a thing. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and remember, the truth isn't just serious, it's drop dead serious.